The temperature's raising, the sun's ablazing. We are in the Southland of California, Los Angeles, where so many people come to chase their dreams of fame and fortune. And on Saturday night at the Staples Center, 4 prize fighters will vie for championship glory. A tantalizing championship doubleheader coming your way at 10 Eastern and Pacific on Showtime Championship Boxing this Saturday night. Mauro Ranallo along with Paulie Malignaggi. We will be joined soon by Hall of Famer Steve Farhood. Coming up on Saturday night, we're going to kick things off with a championship fight in the 154-pound division. Jamel Charla looking to extend his 4-fight knockout streak against a guy, well, one of the most underrated, maybe underappreciated fighters at 154. The former champion, Austin No Doubt Trout, getting another crack to become a 2-time champion at 154 pounds. And then in the main event, it is Los Angeles bragging rights on the line. We present to you the sequel to one of the best fights of 2015, a fight that went down in August here at the Staples Center of that year. It was Leo Santa Cruz and Abner Mares. They threw a combined 2,000-plus punches in what was a bona fide candidate for Fight of the Year for 2015. Santa Cruz prevailed, and here we are nearly 3 years later, the sequel in a city that has produced a lot of mediocre sequels of the cinema variety. Well, this fight is expected to be even better than the original, if you can believe that. Well, we are here for the official weigh-in. Without further ado, let's get the festivities started. It's Featherweight Fuego, Saturday night at the Staples Center.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to Staples Center here in Los Angeles as we get set for Showtime Championship Boxing, a championship doubleheader, all brought to you by Ringstar Sports and TGB Promotions, presented by Premier Boxing Champions and sponsored by Corona Extra, La Cerveza Más Fina, and Casa Noble Tequila. We'll begin as we go live tomorrow night, 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock local time. Our co-main event of the evening, 12 rounds for the WBC Super Welterweight Championship of the World. As we bring on to the scale with an impressive record consisting of 31 wins, 17 of those coming by way of knockout against 4 defeats, fighting out of Las Cruces, New Mexico. He is the former WBA Super Welterweight Champion of the World. Ladies and gentlemen, here is Austin No Doubt Trout. And his opponent, with an undefeated record consisting of 30 wins, 15 of those coming by way of knockout, fighting and representing Houston, Texas, making the 3rd defense of his Super Welterweight Championship. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jermell Iron Man Charlo.
Since hooking up with trainer Derek James, who also trains welterweight champion Errol Spence Jr., Jermell Charlo has turned into a knockout machine, 4 consecutive stoppage victories, including all of his championship fights at 154.
Ladies and gentlemen, the former WBA Super Welterweight Champion of the World, Austin No Doubt Trout.
Talk about Trout being underappreciated, maybe underrated as a 154-pound fighter. Gave Canelo all he could handle.
154 even for Austin No Doubt Trout. 154 even for Austin No Doubt Trout.
And he does his work
and
in coming
his
in
adversary
at 154.
Making the 3rd defense of his world championship, Jermell Iron Man Charlo.
Charlo's brother, Jermel, a minute older, went the distance with Austin Trout.
154 even for Jermell Iron Man Charlo.
So our first championship fight is official.
Showtime Championship Boxing. We go live tomorrow night, 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock local time here from Staples Center in Los Angeles. All brought to you by Ringstar Sports and TGB Promotions and presented by Premier Boxing Champions.
So we await the regular festivities here at the weigh-in, where they will face off and then pose for pictures. And again, Austin Trout, who went the distance with Canelo, was knocked down for the first time in his career, but gave Canelo Alvarez all he could handle back in 2013. Outboxed by Erislandy Lara, then a champion at 154. Was stopped for the first time against a guy who is now a unified champion at 154, Jared Hurd. But against Jermell Charlo, Austin Trout feels that he's the smarter fighter.
This is our co-main event on Showtime Championship Boxing. Ladies and gentlemen, Jermell Charlo and Austin Trout.
Charlo became a champion and come from behind fashion against John Jackson, then starched Charles Hadley.
It's our co-feature, Jermell Charlo, Austin Trout, live from Staples Center on Showtime Championship Boxing.
Charlo then knocked out in the first round the previously undefeated Erickson Lubin, making a huge statement. And both Charlo and Trout getting up in each other's grills here as we are just a day away from their showdown for a 154-pound title. Let's go to Steve Farhood.
So, Austin Trout, that was pretty animated there. What was said?
I just told him I'm ready. He knows we've been working. It's time to go. I mean, ain't really much talking going on. It's time to go ahead and put on that action.
This one on two.
In the last couple of fights, you fought very big super welterweights in Jared Hurd and Jermel's brother, Jamel. You've said you're glad to be finally fighting somebody your own size. Why is size going to matter here?
Well, I mean, size is the matter. I mean, really, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. So you see, he's my size 154 on the button, head to head, nose to nose. You know what I'm saying? And I pushed around the bigger guys for the part of them that I was winning. So I'm ready for this guy. I'm ready for this little guy.
How much, Austin, how much of a sense of urgency for you at this point in your career?
I felt the sense of urgency my whole career. Even when I was undefeated, I felt like I can't lose this fight. So, I mean, I'm used to this urgency. Put my back to the wall is what we have to do every fight.
Prediction?
My hands raised.
Good luck.
Austin Trout says beating Jermell Charlo would be bigger than beating the recently retired future
I'm
Hall
back.
of Famer Miguel Cotto.
And lay them Lions back. The hard part was making weight, right? Obviously. Yeah, he's saying I'm little, but I won't be little tomorrow. Y'all know I'm outsizing everybody. What's up?
Doing great. I don't think I have to ask any questions. Your brother beat Austin Trout in a good fight.
That was them.
What did he tell you about Austin?
I'm me. Just be Mel. Do what you do. Mel and Ma. Yeah.
Ever since you've joined Derek James, you're knocking everybody out.
Wow.
Austin Trout's been stopped only once. Is that what we're going to see tomorrow?
Austin Trout 0-0 tomorrow. Somebody old got to go.
Good luck.
Yeah. Keep running your mouth.
Jermell Iron Man Charlo saying at 28 he's just growing into his man strength. We've seen evidence of it in his last 4 fights, all impressive stoppage wins.
From their epic August 2015 clash, expect another fight of the year candidate. 12 rounds for the WBA Featherweight Championship of the World and also the WBC Diamond Championship. First, we want to bring onto the stage with an impressive record consisting of 31 wins, 15 of those coming by way of knockout against 2 losses and 1 draw. Fighting out of Los Angeles by way of Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico. He is the regular champion of the featherweight division. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Abner Mares. And his opponent with an impressive record, 34 wins, 1 loss, 1 bout even, 19 wins coming by way of knockout. Making the second defense of his crown, fighting out of Los Angeles by way of Michoacan, Mexico. He is the super champion of the featherweight division. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Leo El Famoso Terremoto Santa Cruz. First onto the scale, Abner Mares. The 3-division world champion on the scale. 125.8 for Abner Mares. 125.8 for Abner Mares. And his opponent, also 3-division world champion, Leo El Famoso Terremoto Santa Cruz. $125.4 for Santa Cruz. $125.4 for Santa Cruz. It is our main event here at Staples Center in Los Angeles. All brought to you by Ringstar Sports and TGB Promotions. Presented by Premier Boxing Champions live on Showtime Championship Boxing, 10 Eastern, 7 o'clock Pacific.
Leo Santa Cruz and Abner Mares, 2 of 5 fighters to have won titles at 118, 122, and 126, joining Wilfredo Vasquez, Nonito Donaire, and Jeff Fennick. Other champions at 126, Gary Russell Jr., Josh Warrington, and Oscar Valdez. Both of these champions have talked about unifying the title after this much-anticipated rematch, and bragging rights on the line for Los Angeles Saturday night. Again, they combined for over 2,000 punches in their first fight back in August of 2015.
I think sometimes you feel like the local bragging rights are more important than the world title at this point. You know, the Southern California bragging rights is a lot on the line, and a lot of talking.
And over the years, so many great fights have happened here in Los Angeles, involving Mexican-American fighters, and that tradition will continue.
This is our main event, ladies and gentlemen, the rematch of their epic 2015 affair here at Staples Center. 12 rounds or less for the WBA Featherweight Championship of the World and the WBC Diamond Championship. Santa Cruz and Mares #2 on Showtime Championship Boxing.
Santa Cruz has been involved in world title bouts in 14 of his 16 last fights.
Here at Staples Center.
Mares has successfully rebounded from a vicious first-round knockout loss against Johnny Gonzalez. So both of them are primed, both of them are ready, and dare I say, both may even be better in the rematch. Santa Cruz coming off hellacious fights with Carl Frampton, Mares working with trainer Robert Garcia. A vociferous crowd expected to be on hand at Staples Center. Over 13,000 were in attendance for their first fight in August of 2015 as Santa Cruz defends his claim to the 126-pound throne against Abner Mares. Let's go to Steve Farhood.
Abner Mares, you hear the crowd. Some of them are chanting your name, some are chanting Leo's name. You talk about wanting to fight a smarter fight, but you know what the fans are going to want. And you're a fighter and Leo's a fighter. How do you keep your emotions in check come fight time?
Experience. I mean, I let the emotions get the best of me the first fight 3 years ago. I'm a more mature fighter now, and I'm going to show it come tomorrow night.
You're such an accomplished fighter, a champion, of course, in 3 weights. You fought everybody in 3 weight classes. Yet I get the idea that you might be remembered very much for your rivalry with Leo. Does that put even more pressure on to win this time?
Not at all. If anything, excitement that I have to just put on another good show. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's no way I could give a bad show. That's the type of style I am, and I'm just ready for this. I know Leo's ready, I'm ready, and it's just time to show the world, the fans, that you know, us Mexicans, we united and we give good fights.
Wish you luck.
Thank you. I want to add something. I know the fan base is even. There's a lot of Leo, a lot of Team Mares. Hey, just keep it safe out there. No fights out there. Make your bets for sure, but you know what I'm saying? Just, it's a clean fight. We fight for you guys. The fight is inside the ring.
Class act, Abner.
2 quality
Bring Leo
ambassadors of the sweet science in Mares and Santa Cruz.
Leo, I'll ask you the same question I asked Abner. You love to fight. Yeah. You know the crowd is going to want a fight. You can feel the emotion out here already a day before. How do you check your emotions, and how do you fight the smart fight?
No, you know, like I always said, I always fight for the fans. When I come here, I don't care if I lose, as long as I give a great fight and for the fans, because that's what I care more. For the fans, I want them to go home happy and to have a great fight. It don't matter at the end of the day. Whoever wants us to win is going to be the winner.
You have a lot of respect for Abner. You know each other a long time. You sparred with each other years ago. Yet, because you're both from L.A., you both live here, there's a personal nature to this fight. How personal is it for you?
For me, it's not personal at all. You know, we both the best. We want to prove who's the best, who's the #1, and that's just what it is, to prove who's the best of L.A., because we're both from here. But rather than that, there's no disrespect or nothing. You know, Mares is a great guy, great person, and you know, this is business. We have to do this.
You say you want to win more easily than you did last time. How do you do that?
You know, be smart. Be smart, go out there and yes, because, you know, it's not going to be easy because, you know, I want to please the fans. And to please the fans, I have to go out there and I have to make it a war. You know, I have to go back and forth. I have to trade punches. And it's going to be hard because I always try to please the fans. But at the end of the day, sometimes I have to do it for myself. But we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Best of luck to you, Leo.
All right, thank you very much, Steve Farhood. We cannot wait for the fistic fireworks of the featherweight variety on a Saturday night when Leo Santa Cruz and Abner Mares run it back in a much-anticipated rematch at 126 pounds. And I'm once again joined by Paulie Malignaggi. And Paulie, after what we witnessed in August of 2015, how can it be a better fight?
Well, I think you're going to have a smarter fight. You'll still have those explosive combinations and those explosive exchanges between the two fighters. I think the crowd in a fight like this, especially when you place the fight in Southern California where they're both based, the fan bases are always vociferous. I think it automatically is going to charge these guys with a lot of emotions, and it's going to make them want to exchange probably more than they even want to. You know, you always think like, okay, they're a little bit smarter now. You know, Abner talks about how he's smarter. Leo talks about how he's more experienced as well, and they're going to fight a smarter fight. But I think at the end of the day, when you put two Mexican-American fighters or Mexican fighters in general into the ring with one another in Southern California or in a part of the United States where the Mexican fans really thrive, I really think the charge, the electric charge from the crowd will automatically get their emotions really raised up to a level where they're going to fight more than even they want to, you know, and before you know it, once you get caught up in a fight like that, you got action.
What about fights you've been in against guys like Ricky Hatton, like Amir Khan, like Miguel Cotto? Did the atmospheres impact your performances?
I'll tell you what, it was definitely the
even
Miguel
Adrian
Cotto,
Broner.
the Miguel Cotto fight was a rough crowd. I'll tell you, speaking of Mexican and Mexican American fight crowds, Juan Diaz in Houston, Texas. You know, I remember that crowd was really, really loud and vociferous. You know, they get things going. They're very big boxing fans. They're very emotional boxing fans, and I think they will contribute to the action tomorrow night.
We're joined again by Steve Farhood. Steve, what adjustments would you like to see both Santa Cruz and Mares make in the fight on Saturday to make it easier on themselves?
Well, I think the first fight told us Mares has to calm down a little bit. I think he started so fast, so physical, exchanging with Santa Cruz in the first fight over the first 6 rounds, and sure enough, he got outboxed over the last 6 rounds. So I think he has to give a more balanced effort. Leo Santa Cruz, it's the same old story with him. You know, he needs to box. He needs to use the range. He has exceptional reach, exceptional height for a fighter at 126 pounds. Doesn't always use it. We saw it with Frampton the second fight. He can do it. But as Paulie was alluding to when I was coming and sitting in here, the emotion, I mean, it's not that easy to control.
Round 12, the last time we saw these two warriors in the ring, Mares threw more punches against Santa Cruz than he's ever faced and hit him more. What does he take away from that last round? Because he admitted, like Steve has said, that he has to be smarter, has to be more patient. Does Mares take anything away from that final round, or is it a complete
Not really.
cleaning of the white?
You're in round 12. You're tired. You know, so you're going to hit the guy a little more. You're going to be more hittable yourself sometimes. You know, I don't think you take anything away from that. I think the fight's over. The result has happened. I think you take what you can out of the fight in general. I don't think you're looking at round 12 or any round in particular. And then, you know, you're trying to take the positives and bring it into this fight, and as well as bring some adjustments. And I think a point that might be relevant to this rematch as opposed to several others, 3 years between fights. You know, 3 years ago, a lot of times when fighters have a great fight, they have a rematch that's the next fight for each guy. There's a lot of water under the bridge here for both guys.
Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier, the Thrill in Manila, their third meeting, considered maybe the greatest heavyweight championship fight in history. Big part of it was because they were diminished. They had been through the wars. Going into this rematch, again, 3 years later, a completely different story, but just saying how different the equations go. These two, they feel they're better than they were in their first fight. Do you concur, Steve? I mean, we'll have to wait and see, but what do you make of that?
Well, generally speaking, the lighter the weight class, the shorter the prime, and the younger the prime. With Leo, I think pressure fighters who throw as many punches as him usually don't have long careers. That's why it's so important. That's among the reasons it's so important for him to back off a little bit, use the reach, extend his career. Mares, same thing. You know, he's an action, high-energy guy. So Mares, I believe, is 32. Leo's 29. They're at that age where for this weight class, you start looking, and that's one of the things I'll be looking for tomorrow.
Paulie, in the first fight, Leo Santa Cruz mixed long-range boxing with his normal high-output offense. Are those the two biggest keys again for him in this fight? And when Mares says he has to be patient and box, how does he navigate the reach disadvantage?
Yeah, and that's I think that's a big key for Santa Cruz. I think we saw it in spots in the Mares fight, and we also saw it a lot in the Frampton rematch. You know, where Santa Cruz really can box at distance and box well at distance. Mares keeps talking about how he's got a jab and he's got to make his jab work for him and maybe not get too emotional. But the paradox he has here is Santa Cruz, if he starts jabbing and boxing well, is Mares' jabbing style going to be enough to put Santa Cruz into trouble, or is Mares going to have to rev the engine again too early in the fight just to get some advantages? You can tell me you're going to come out to box Leo Santa Cruz, but if Leo Santa Cruz comes out and boxes you, are you going to get outboxed, or are you going to be able to box him?
Right.
You know, because Leo is a pretty quality boxer himself when he decides to box. And if that happens, does it then force Abner to throw more punches than he wants to early on so he doesn't go behind the 8 ball too much? It's kind of something that I'm curious about once the fight starts. I understand where Abner's coming from in that he doesn't want to throw too many punches early and not get charged up by the emotion of the crowd. But if Leo is outboxing him early, which could very well happen, Leo's a good boxer, does he then have to step on the gas too
Probably.
soon?
Yeah.
You know? And then what happens late?
Let's remember, Mares boxed beautifully against Jesus Cuellar, but Jesus Cuellar isn't
No.
Leo Santa Cruz.
It's a different style
Different
and also
total,
a different frame in front of you.
Steve, I call you Mr. Boxopedia out of reverence, a Hall of Famer, a man who keeps me employed, believe it or not. He makes me sound a lot smarter about the sweet science than I deserve.
Steve, see what you can do, Paul.
In the canon of Los Angeles prize fights, and this city has a storied history.
Oh,
sure,
yeah.
it hasn't been as active recently, but going back to the days at the Olympic Auditorium, the Los Angeles Sports Arena, where does this fight, this rivalry between Abner Mares and Leo Santa Cruz fit in the pantheon of prize fighting lore here in this city?
Well, Mo, I fully expect a really exciting fight. I don't think these two are capable of anything less. And given how the first fight went, I think they belong in the pantheon of the great matchups, the Chacon Lopez's, the Zarate Zamores. And don't forget also, Abner Mares was born in Mexico. Okay, he's a Mexican. Leo Santa Cruz was born in America. He's a Mexican-American. The best rivalries in the history of Los Angeles have been Mexicans against Mexican-Americans.
Why do we keep saying Leo Santa Cruz was born in Mexico when he was born in Los Angeles?
For some reason, it was written in a press release somewhere, and it's
It's on
incorrect.
the internet. It's
Because
true.
he speaks English with an accent like he just got here.
Hey, last point about this much-anticipated main event, talking about the featherweight division, and of course, it's a featherweight fiesta on Showtime. We've seen Gary Russell Jr. recently. We saw Josh Warrington upset Lee Selby. Oscar Valdez is also a belt holder. Where does the winner of this fight end up in the pecking order at 126?
Well, for starters, if Mares wins, of course, there could be a rubber match. That's obvious, right? You have Gary Russell. To me, either one of these guys against Gary Russell would be fantastic because it's like a cultural difference. A West Coast style against an East Coast style. Gary Russell's about speed, about movement. He's a very short featherweight. The other guys are more pressure fighters, throw a lot of punches. And then you have Frampton. And who wouldn't want to see Carl Frampton against either one of these guys either? So,
But of course,
we always bring the point out, big fights and make big fights. We've concentrated on the featherweight division on Showtime, and we're reaping the benefits.
Now, the thing about Frampton is now that you have Warrington as a new champion from the UK,
Yeah.
they might end up going up against each other
Right.
instead. So you almost wind up in a two group phases. Like you have the North American group of
Semifinals,
champions,
right?
and the European world champions, and maybe they have to kind of eliminate each other. We'll see. Could go anyway.
Speaking of red-hot divisions, and a division that has been front and center on Showtime Championship Boxing, 154-pound weight class, serving up some incredible fights. Erislandy Lara, Jared Hurd, and, of course, going into the fight on Saturday night between Jermell Charlo and Austin Trout. Trout has been a champion at 154. We've talked about it already on this telecast. Steve, I called him underappreciated and maybe underrated. Do you agree when it comes to Austin Trout? Or going into this fight, what is Austin Trout's legacy right now?
Well,
in his
right now
career?
it's his win over Cotto. But that's a
Well,
while
what about
back.
the fight against Canelo? Could have gone either
Very,
way.
very close fight, much closer than the scores indicated. Yes, but Austin, this is a must-win for Austin Trout.
It's what have
He's
you
a
done
little
for me
older now.
lately?
That's the world we live in. And for Charlo, to me, I've spoken for a long time about the Charlos trying to separate themselves from each other because that it's a star sport. You want to create a star. You don't want people not to tell the difference between Jermel and Jermel. Jermel has a chance now, I think, to make an emphatic point by maybe stopping Trout, which his brother didn't do. And more importantly, that would give him the opportunity potentially to become the king of 154 pounders, something else his brother didn't do.
Well, Jared Hurd, the first person to stop Austin Trout, Paulie, and Jermell Charlo riding a 4-fight knockout streak. He's saying all the right things about just, waiting for the knockout to happen if it does. Working with Derek James now, obviously he is really sitting down on his punches. Will we see? Do you think we'll see a knockout on Saturday night?
I mean, it's possible. You know, obviously Trout has shown some deficiencies in his chin at times, but it's been against good punchers. You know, I mean, Jared Hurd stopped him, Canelo dropped him, but, you know, Trout's a quality operator. You know, it's not like, you know, we can't just talk about Austin Trout in this fight like, okay, he's just the guy in front of Charlo, and how is Charlo going to look? You know, if Jermel has a bad night, Austin Trout can win the fight. You know what I'm saying? Like,
how does he win the fight?
You know, he's very crafty. He takes his time. You know, Jermel's the kind of guy, as skilled as he is, he kind of falls into these distraction lulls, and maybe we haven't seen it lately, but I can remember the John David Jackson fight, wondering, what is this guy doing? Like, he's clearly losing to a guy who he's way better than, and, you know, he kind of goes into these lulls at times. So, you know, you can't just automatically write off a guy like Austin Trout, because even if he's been defeated of late, he's been defeated competitively. You know, the Jared Hurd fight, he had his moments, especially early on.
And Hurd much bigger.
The Jamel Charlo fight, he had his moments late in that fight. You know, so you know, he can be dangerous early, he can be dangerous late. You know, it all kind of flows into how the fight winds up evolving, the evolution of the fight, and see where they go. Jermel's a quality guy. He's one of the best fighters in the world. You know, he's probably on the brink of a pound-for-pound list. This weight class is just so dynamite. It's hard to separate yourself from the other stars in this weight class in general. But you know, let's not overlook Austin Trout and say he's just here to pick up a check.
But I do want to focus for you, Steve, right now on Jermell Charlo's last outing. Erickson Lubin, we heard all the hype. We saw what he was doing in his career. You know, one of the prospects for the next big thing in the sport. Gets starched in the first round. What do you take away from that? What is that a testament to? How good Jermell Charlo is, or was Erickson Lubin?
Nobody saw that coming. Clearly, a lot of people picked Lubin to win. I think it was virtually a pick 'em fight odds-wise. So to me, that was the punctuation mark on this new Jermell Charlo, working with Derek James, where he scored 3 consecutive big knockouts. And let me tell you something. And Paulie's talked on this show many times about the Charlos, how technically sound they are. If you add power to Jermell Charlo's game, maybe the only thing that was sort of missing, I don't know, you know, you talk pound for pound, talk pound for pound. And if he wins, there's going to be a lot of pressure on him to fight Jared Hurd, because that's the biggest fight at 154, obviously.
What does Austin Trout have to do to win this fight in your estimation?
He's a boxer. You know, when he gets aggressive like he did against Erislandy Lara because he was fighting another boxer, he's not effective. You know, he has to box. He has to kind of control the pace. He's a little bit older. And he wants to save something for the second half of the fight. He says it's very important I don't get damaged in the first half of the fight.
All right, guys, look forward to your expert analysis, as always, during the telecast, Paulie, and, of course, the best scorer, unofficial scorer in the sport, Steve Hard. Always appreciate it, guys. We cannot wait for this championship doubleheader. It is coming your way Saturday night at 10 o'clock Eastern and Pacific on Showtime Championship Boxing. Jermell Charlo defending his 154-pound title against former champ Austin Trout. And Leo Santa Cruz, Abner Mares running it back in a Fight of the Year candidate from August 2015, a piece of the 126-pound throne up for grabs in our main event. But right now, I want to just end by saying, first of all, thank you for all the incredible feedback to the documentary Bipolar Rock and Roller. But in light of what has transpired this week, with the suicide deaths of Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain, I want to implore you, if you or someone you know is suffering from a mental illness, a mental health crisis, there is help out there. I want you to reach out right now to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. It's 1-800-273-TALK. That's 1-800-273-8255. It is my goal, it is my duty in life to smash the stigma of mental illness, and together we will save lives. We'll see you Saturday night, 10 o'clock Eastern, on Showtime Championship Boxing.